The sky above Earth split open with light, not the gentle light of dawn nor the pale glow of the moon. This was something else entirely. A rupture in the fabric of space itself, tearing wide like a wound in reality. Through it came the ships. They were massive, cathedral-sized vessels of gleaming metal and pulsing energy, their hulls etched with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the vacuum of space. 12 warships in total, each one large enough to cast shadows over entire cities. They arranged themselves in a perfect geometric formation above Earth's orbit, their presence impossible to ignore, impossible to dismiss. And then, they spoke. Every screen on Earth flickered. Every radio crackled. Every device capable of receiving a signal suddenly carried the same message, transmitted simultaneously in over 6,000 languages. The voice was deep, resonant, and dripping with authority. People of Earth, we are the Zephyron Empire, masters of 847 worlds, keepers of the eternal flame, descendants of the first ones who walked among the stars when your ancestors were still crawling in the mud. Your isolation ends today. Your independence is forfeit. You will be integrated into our great dominion, and you will serve the glory of Emperor Valthorix the Magnificent, he who commands the void, bearer of the celestial crown, eternal and undying. There was a pause, as if the speaker expected something. Panic, perhaps. Riots. Mass hysteria. Instead, Earth went silent. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of confusion. The kind of silence that precedes laughter. It started small. A few chuckles on social media. A handful of memes appearing on forums. Within minutes, the floodgates opened. Twitter exploded. Reddit threads multiplied like bacteria. TikTok videos went viral faster than any algorithm could track. Did that alien just call himself he who commands the void? My uncle calls himself king of the grill, and he can't even flip a burger without starting a fire. 847 worlds, and they still haven't figured out how to make a humble entrance, eternal and undying. Buddy, I've got yogurt in my fridge with similar claims. News anchors around the world struggled to maintain their composure. On CNN, a veteran reporter with 20 years of experience covering wars and disasters had to pause mid-sentence, her shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. On BBC, the host simply put his head in his hands. In Tokyo, a news anchor broke into giggles so severe she had to be replaced mid-broadcast. The memes came fast and merciless. Photoshopped images of the alien ships with "World's Okayest Conquerors" banners. Mock movie posters. Independence Day 2 were not impressed. Animated GIFs of people yawning, while alien ships loomed overhead. One particularly viral video showed a teenager in Los Angeles, pointing at the sky with his phone. "Bro," he said deadpan, "that's not even the weirdest thing I've seen this week. Have you been to a Walmart at 3 a.m.? The United Nations convened an emergency session within hours. World leaders gathered via secure video conference, their faces arranged in neat rows on screens. The Secretary General cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face an unprecedented situation. An alien civilization has arrived and is demanding our submission. We must respond with unity, with dignity, and with..." The president of Brazil unmuted himself. "Are we seriously going to pretend that transmission wasn't the funniest thing we've ever heard?" The room erupted. Not in panic, but in laughter. The Prime Minister of Canada was wiping tears from her eyes. The Chancellor of Germany had turned away from the camera, shoulders shaking. Even the usually stoic representatives from Russia and China were grinning. 847 worlds, the President of France said, gasping. And they still sound like a badly translated video game villain. "The eternal flame," added the Prime Minister of India. What does that even mean? Is it a metaphor? Do they have a literal flame somewhere? Do they have to keep relighting it? The Secretary General tried to regain control. "Please, we must take this seriously. They have warships in orbit. They could pose a genuine threat." Could they, though? The question came from Dr. Sarah Chen, humanity's foremost expert on theoretical physics and the newly appointed UN science advisor. She leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. "Has anyone actually analyzed their ships?" "Because I have, and I've got some notes." The room quieted, curious. "Their propulsion systems are plasma-based, which we phased out 15 years ago in favor of quantum tunneling drives. Their energy signatures suggest fusion reactors, efficient. Sure, but we've been using zero-point energy extraction since 2041. and their hull composition is a titanium carbon alloy that we stopped using for spacecraft construction in the late 2030s because it's too heavy and not nearly radiation resistant enough for long-term deep space travel. Silence, are you saying? The President of the United States said slowly. That these aliens are behind us technologically? Dr. Chen shrugged. In some areas, yes, significantly. The laughter returned, but this time it carried a different edge. Not mockery, but genuine amusement mixed with relief. Well then, the Secretary General said, a small smile finally breaking through his diplomatic composure. I suppose we should send a delegation. Show them we're civilized, even if they're a bit theatrical. The delegation was assembled within 6 hours. A carefully selected team of diplomats, scientists, and military advisors, chosen to represent Earth's diversity and capability. They were instructed to be polite, professional, and respectful. What they weren't told was that every single one of them had watched the alien transmission at least 5 times, and none of them could keep a straight face about it. The transport shuttle docked with the Zephyron flagship, a vessel called the Eternal Dominion, because of course it was. The airlock hissed open, and the human delegation stepped into a corridor that could only be described as aggressively ornate. Gold plating everywhere, crystalline structures that pulsed with bioluminescent light, banners depicting conquests and victories. It's like a Las Vegas casino had a baby with a medieval castle, whispered Ambassador Marcus Hall, the delegation's lead diplomat. And the baby had terrible taste, added Dr. Chen. They were escorted by Zephyron guards, tall, reptilian beings clad in ceremonial armor that looked impressive, but probably wasn't very practical in actual combat. The guards said nothing, their faces unreadable behind ornate helmets. The throne room was exactly what the humans expected. Massive, overdone, and designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings stretched high above, covered in murals depicting alien gods and cosmic battles. Pillars of polished stone lined the walkway to the throne itself. A towering seat of dark metal and glowing crystals. Seated upon it was Emperor Valthorix. He was impressive, the humans had to admit. Nearly 9 feet tall with scales that shimmered like oil on water, eyes that glowed with an inner fire. His crown was an intricate piece of metalwork that seemed to float above his head, suspended by some kind of magnetic field. His robes were deep purple, embroidered with gold thread and patterns that hurt to look at too closely. He stared down at the human delegation with an expression of supreme confidence. The humans stared back, several of them holding coffee cups. You stand, Valthorix began, his voice booming through the chamber. Before the rightful ruler of this galaxy, I am Emperor Valthorix the Magnificent, he who commands the void, bearer of the celestial crown, eternal and undying. Yes, we got the memo, Ambassador Hall said pleasantly, sipping his coffee. Nice to meet you. I'm Marcus. This is Dr. Chen, General Rodriguez, and the rest of our team. Thanks for having us aboard. Valthorix blinked. This was not the response he had anticipated. In 847 previous conquests, the newly subjugated species had responded with fear, anger, or desperate negotiation. Never had anyone interrupted his title recitation. Never had anyone brought coffee. You do not kneel, Valthorix said, his voice carrying a note of genuine confusion. Oh, is that a thing? Ambassador Hall glanced at his team. Did we miss that in the invitation? I didn't see anything about kneeling in the transmission. It is not an invitation, one of Valthorix's advisors hissed from beside the throne. It is a declaration of conquest. You are now subjects of the Empire. Right, Dr. Chen said, nodding. So like space taxes? Or is this more of a homeowners association situation? Because I've got to tell you, we've already got the UN, and that's bureaucratic enough. Several of the human delegates had to cough to cover their laughter. Valthorix's eyes narrowed. You mock us. No, Ambassador Hall said quickly, though his smile suggested otherwise. We're just trying to understand the arrangement. You've conquered hundreds of worlds. Congratulations on that, by the way, very impressive. And now you're adding Earth to the list. We just want to know what that looks like in practical terms. It looks, Valthorix said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble, like obedience, like tribute, like recognition of your place in the natural order of the universe. Okay, but why though? General Rodriguez spoke up for the first time, her tone genuinely curious. What do you get out of it? What do we get out of it? I mean, you've got 847 worlds already. What's one more? The question seemed to stump the Emperor. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked to his advisors. They whispered frantically among themselves. The glory of the Empire, one finally said. The expansion of our territory. The spread of our superior culture. Superior culture, Dr. Chen repeated, pulling out a tablet. Okay, let's talk about that. Your ships. They're using plasma conduit technology for power distribution, right? One of the Zephyron engineers stepped forward, pride evident in his posture. Yes, the finest plasma systems in the known galaxy. That's cute, Dr. Chen said, and the word hung in the air like a grenade. We actually phased those out about 15 years ago. Too much energy loss over distance, plus the maintenance requirements were ridiculous. We're using fiber optic quantum entanglement networks now. Zero energy loss, instantaneous distribution, self-repairing. I could send you some schematics if you want. The engineer's expression shifted from pride to confusion to something approaching horror. And your weapons, General Rodriguez continued, warming to the subject. I saw the energy signatures when you did that little display earlier. Nice fireworks, by the way. You're using focused plasma cannons, aren't you? The most powerful in the galaxy, Valthoric said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Again cute, Rodriguez said. We've got those too, mostly for mining operations now. For actual combat, we prefer relativistic kinetic weapons, basically throwing things really, really fast, and directed quantum decoherence beams. Much more efficient, harder to detect, and they don't light up every sensor in the star system when you fire them. The throne room had gone very quiet. Emperor Valthorix leaned forward, his glowing eyes fixed on Ambassador Hall. You are lying, attempting to deceive us with false claims of advancement. Your species has barely left your own planet. We've got permanent settlements on Mars, Europa, and Titan, Hall said mildly, plus orbital stations around Jupiter and Saturn. We've sent probes to every planet in our solar system and a few beyond it. We've been to our moon so many times it's basically a tourist destination. Last year we finished construction on our first interstellar probe. Should reach Alpha Centauri in about 40 years. Impossible, hissed one of the advisors. Your species has only been broadcasting radio signals for a little over a century. You are primitives, Dr. Chen smiled. Yeah, we get that a lot. It's a common misconception. Just because we're new to the galactic stage doesn't mean we're stupid. We've been learning pretty fast. Aggressive species, lots of competition, constant innovation, that whole thing. Turns out when you spend 10,000 years figuring out new and interesting ways to fight each other, you get really good at problem solving. Emperor Valthoric stood from his throne, his massive frame unfolding to its full height. The gesture was meant to be intimidating, to remind the humans of their physical inferiority. But as he looked down at the delegation, he saw something that chilled him more than any weapon could. They weren't afraid. They weren't even impressed. They were amused. Leave us, Valthoric said suddenly, his voice tight. We will continue these discussions later. You will be escorted back to your vessel. The humans exchanged glances, shrugged, and followed the guards back to the airlock. As they walked, Dr. Chen leaned over to Ambassador Hall. Did we just accidentally win first contact? She whispered. I think we did, Hall whispered back. By making them feel insecure about their technology? Apparently. Huh, Dr. Chen said. That's a new one. Behind them in the throne room of the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Valthorix the Magnificent sank back onto his throne. His advisors gathered around him, their voices a nervous cacophony. They must be bluffing, Your Eminence. No species advances that quickly. They're primitives. They have to be. But Valthorix said nothing. He simply stared at the spot where the humans had stood, remembering the casual confidence in their eyes, the coffee cups in their hands, the complete absence of fear or reverence. For the first time in his long reign, Emperor Valthorix felt doubt, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered a question he had never considered before. What if we're not the most advanced species in the galaxy? What if we're just the loudest? The Zephyron Empire did not handle uncertainty well. For 3 days after the initial meeting, Emperor Valthorix remained in his private chambers, refusing audiences and ignoring the increasingly frantic requests from his military advisors. His scouts had been dispatched to observe Earth more closely, to probe its defenses, to find evidence that the humans had been lying about their capabilities. What they found did not bring comfort. Earth's orbital infrastructure was far more extensive than initial scans had suggested. Hundreds of satellites, dozens of space stations, mining operations on the moon that were larger than some Zephyron colony worlds, and the energy signatures, those were the most troubling. There were power sources scattered across the planet and throughout the solar system that the Empire's sensors couldn't quite identify, operating on principles that seemed to defy standard physics. They could be masking primitive technology with sophisticated deception, suggested Admiral Kreltok, the Empire's chief military strategist, making themselves appear more advanced than they truly are. Or, said Science Overseer Thinra, her voice quiet, they could actually be that advanced, and we walked into their system expecting them to bow. The silence that followed was deafening. Emperor Valthorix finally emerged from his chambers on the fourth day. His decision made. If the humans would not submit through diplomacy, they would submit through fear. The Empire had not conquered 847 worlds by asking politely. Prepare a demonstration, he commanded. Something unmistakable. Something that will show these humans the futility of resistance. The target was selected carefully. A large asteroid in Earth's vicinity, far enough from the planet to pose no danger, but close enough to be clearly visible. The Eternal Dominion maneuvered into position, its primary weapons charging with a whine that resonated through the hull. Every broadcast channel on Earth was hijacked once again. Valthorix's face appeared on billions of screens. People of Earth, he said, his voice cold. You have shown disrespect to the Empire. You have mocked our authority. You have questioned our supremacy. This ends now. Witness the power that has subjugated hundreds of worlds. Witness and despair. The flagship's main cannon fired. A lance of superheated plasma, brilliant and terrible, crossed the void in seconds. It struck the asteroid dead center, and for a moment the rock glowed like a newborn star. Then it exploded, fragmenting into thousands of pieces that scattered across the black. On Earth, the reaction was immediate, but not the reaction Valthorix had hoped for. Within minutes, the video had been downloaded, edited, and remixed. Someone added sports commentary, and here comes the wind-up. The pitch. It's good. That's a solid 7 out of 10, folks. Decent explosion, could use more flair, but you can't fault the enthusiasm. Another version added cartoon sound effects. Someone else edited in footage of fireworks with the caption, "When you try to intimidate humanity, but we've been blowing stuff up for fun since we invented gunpowder." The most popular version, viewed over 1 billion times in the first hour, featured a voiceover in a deadpan Australian accent. Here we see the Zephyron Empire in its natural habitat, desperately trying to look scary. Crikey, what a beauty. Notice how it picks on an inanimate object that can't fight back. Classic intimidation display. Let's see if it works. Spoiler. It did not work. News anchors around the world struggled to maintain professional decorum. The alien empire has destroyed an asteroid in what appears to be a show of force, said one reporter, barely keeping a straight face. In related news, humanity collectively responded with memes and snark. More at 11. Social media was ruthless. They blew up a rock. A rock. My neighbor blows up rocks every weekend with homemade explosives, and we just call the cops on him. Imagine traveling light years across space just to shoot at something that can't shoot back. That's not intimidating, that's just sad. Guys, let's be respectful. They worked really hard on that laser show. I'm sure it means a lot to them. Emperor Valthorix watched the human response with something approaching disbelief. His advisors stood in uncomfortable silence, unsure what to say. They're laughing, the Emperor said quietly. We destroyed an asteroid with enough force to level a city, and they're laughing. Perhaps, Admiral Kreltok suggested carefully, we should inspect their defenses directly. Demand access to their military installations. If they refuse, we'll know they're hiding something. If they agree, we can assess their true capabilities. It was a reasonable plan, logical, strategic, which is why Valthorix was surprised when the humans immediately agreed. Sure, Ambassador Hall said via secure transmission. You want to see our defenses? No problem. We'll give you a tour. How about Thursday? We can do lunch. Thursday arrived with a casual efficiency that somehow made the Zephyrin delegation more nervous than outright hostility would have. A human shuttle arrived to transport them, piloted by a cheerful young woman who introduced herself as Captain Lisa Martinez. First time visiting Earth? She asked as they descended through the atmosphere. You're gonna love it. We're doing the military base tour today, but if you have time, I totally recommend checking out the Grand Canyon. Blows people's minds every time. The Zephyron officers exchanged uncertain glances. The military installation they were taken to was called Cheyenne Mountain Complex, a facility built into solid granite in the North American continent. As they approached, Admiral Kreltok noted the relatively modest external defenses. "This is your primary command center?" he asked, unable to hide his skepticism. "One of them," General Rodriguez said, meeting them at the entrance. She was dressed in casual fatigues, completely relaxed. "We've got redundant systems all over the planet. And off-planet, obviously. But this is a good place to start the tour." They descended into the mountain through corridors that looked surprisingly ordinary. No gold plating, no crystalline structures, just clean walls, efficient lighting, and the occasional vending machine. "Where are your weapons?" asked one of the Zephyron tactical officers. "Your defense emplacements?" "Your plasma batteries?" "Oh, those are outside," Rodriguez said. "You passed them on the way in." "We saw nothing." "Exactly." Rodriguez smiled. "That's kind of the point." She led them to a control room where dozens of humans sat at workstations, monitoring screens filled with data. One wall was dominated by a massive display showing Earth and the surrounding space. "This is our defensive monitoring system," Rodriguez explained. "We track everything that moves within a light hour of Earth. Ships, asteroids, comets, space debris, the occasional lost probe. We've been tracking your fleet since you emerged from FTL at the edge of the Oort cloud, 3 weeks before you announced yourselves." Admiral Kreltok's scales paled. "That's impossible. We were using stealth protocols." "Yeah, those don't really work against quantum entanglement sensors," Dr. Chen said, appearing from a side door with a tablet in hand. "We can detect the gravitational ripples from your engines, the neutrino emissions from your reactors, even the heat signatures from your life support systems. It's pretty comprehensive." She tapped her tablet and the display zoomed in on the Zephyron flagship. "This is the Eternal Dominion, by the way. Nice ship. We've got full scans of its interior layout, power systems, weapon placements, crew complement, and the snack preferences of your senior officers. Admiral, you're apparently very fond of something our translation software calls spiced meat tubes. Each to their own." The Zephyron delegation stood in stunned silence, but that's just monitoring, Rodriguez continued. "You wanted to see weapons? Fair enough. Hey Chen, can you bring up the orbital defense grid?" The display shifted and suddenly thousands of new contacts appeared, forming layers around Earth like shells. Satellites, weapons platforms, autonomous defense drones, all of them previously invisible to Zephyron sensors. "This is our current active defense network," Rodriguez said. "About 8,000 individual units, each capable of independent targeting and engagement. They use a combination of kinetic interceptors, directed energy weapons, and what we call quantum decoherence beams. Basically, we make your atoms forget they're supposed to stick together. Very effective, very clean, leaves no debris." "But these are all in orbit," Admiral Kreltok said, grasping for something, anything to challenge. "What about your ground defenses? Surface installations are vulnerable to orbital bombardment." "Are they, though?" Rodriguez pulled up another display. "These are our ground-based defensive emplacements. Mostly underground, naturally. We've got them scattered across every continent, including Antarctica, because, honestly, penguins deserve protection too." The sheer number of installations made Admiral Kreltok's head spin. Each site is equipped with relativistic kinetic launchers. We call them railguns colloquially, capable of putting a tungsten rod into low orbit in under 3 seconds. The rods travel at about 3% of light speed. At that velocity, a 10-kilogram projectile hits with the energy of a small nuclear weapon. And before you ask, yes, they can target objects in orbit. We can essentially throw rocks at your ships, and those rocks will go through your shields like they're not even there. This is too much for a species barely a century into space travel," Overseer Thinra said, her voice shaking. How did you advance so quickly?" Dr. Chen shrugged. "Competition, mostly. See, humans have this habit of forming groups and then competing with those groups. Nations, corporations, religions, sports teams, academic institutions, you name it. For most of our history, we've been fighting each other, trying to one-up each other, racing to be first, best, strongest. It's incredibly wasteful and kind of stupid. But it's also a really effective innovation engine. You weaponized your own internal conflicts, Thinra said slowly. Horrified understanding dawning. We weaponized everything, Rodriguez said. Physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, art, music, literature. If it exists, humans have figured out how to either kill someone with it or use it to prevent being killed. It's not something we're necessarily proud of, but it's made us very, very good at survival. Emperor Valthorix, who had been silent throughout the tour, finally spoke. Why did you show us this? You could have kept your capabilities hidden, maintained the element of surprise. Ambassador Hall, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the room, stepped forward. Because we're not trying to fight you, Your Eminence. We're trying to talk to you. Yes, we have weapons. Yes, we could make things very difficult for your fleet if we wanted to, but we don't want to. We'd much rather figure out a way to coexist. Coexist, Valthorix repeated, tasting the word. You've conquered 847 worlds, Hall continued. That's impressive, genuinely. But those worlds submitted out of fear, right? They saw your ships and your weapons and they surrendered because they didn't think they could win. As is natural, Admiral Kreltok said stiffly. Maybe, Hall allowed. But Earth's different. We've spent our entire history fighting people who were just as smart, just as determined, just as well-armed as we were. Every conflict pushed us to innovate, to adapt, to get better. So when your fleet showed up, our first thought wasn't, oh no, we're doomed. It was, I wonder what kind of tech they have that we can learn from. You're not afraid of us, Valthorix said. It wasn't a question, should we be? Hall asked simply. The question hung in the air, unanswered. The cultural exchange was Ambassador Hall's idea, pitched as a way to help the Zephyran Empire understand humanity better. What it actually turned into was 3 days of organized chaos that left the alien delegation questioning everything they thought they knew about civilization. It started innocently enough, a global festival, representatives from every human nation, showcasing food, art, music, and technology. The Zephyron delegates were given seats of honor, expecting something formal and rigid, a display of the humans' best attempt at sophistication. What they got was noise, color, and overwhelming sensory chaos. The food court alone nearly broke them. Hundreds of cuisines, thousands of dishes, flavors ranging from subtle to aggressive, textures from smooth to deliberately crunchy. One Zephyron officer tried something called hot sauce and had to be taken to the medical tent. Another discovered ice cream and refused to leave the dessert section for 4 hours. How do you have so many varieties of everything? Overseer Thinra asked, overwhelmed by the sheer diversity on display. How do you function as a unified species when you're so different? We don't really, said the delegate from Nigeria, laughing. Unified is a strong word. We argue constantly about everything, but that's kind of the point. Different perspectives, different ideas, different approaches to problems. It makes things messy, but it also makes us adaptable. The music showcase was worse. Classical symphonies followed by death metal, followed by K-pop, followed by traditional Aboriginal didgeridoo. Performances followed by experimental electronic music that seemed to exist purely to challenge the concept of melody. The Zephyran delegates experienced something humans called cultural whiplash. It's also chaotic, Admiral Kreltok said, watching a breakdancing competition with something approaching horror. How do you maintain order? We don't, mostly, General Rodriguez said, eating a taco. We kind of just let people do their thing, as long as they're not hurting anyone. Turns out when you give people freedom to be creative, they come up with some wild stuff. The final event was a meme competition, a concept that had to be explained 3 times before the Zephyran delegates even began to understand it. Humans from around the world submitted their best attempts at humor, satire, and cultural commentary, all related to first contact with the Zephyron Empire. The winning entry was a video that juxtaposed Emperor Valthorix's dramatic speeches with footage of a house cat knocking things off tables, set to dramatic orchestral music. It had been viewed 2 billion times. Emperor Valthorix watched it in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, for the first time since arriving at Earth, he laughed. It was a small laugh, barely more than a chuckle, but it was genuine. His advisors stared at him in shock. They made me into a cat, he said, watching the video loop. A small petty creature knocking over cups for no reason. And it's accurate. That's essentially what we've been doing, isn't it? Making grand gestures expecting awe, throwing tantrums when we don't get the respect we think we deserve. Your Eminence, Admiral Kreltok began. No, Valthorix held up a hand. They're right to laugh. We came here expecting primitives and we found equals, perhaps superiors in some ways. We threatened them and they responded with humor. We showed force and they showed restraint. We tried to conquer them and they offered us ice cream. He stood, his full height still impressive, but his posture somehow less rigid than before. I request a private audience with Earth's leadership, he said. A real one. No throne rooms, no ceremonies, no titles, just conversation. The meeting took place in a small conference room in Geneva, Switzerland. No guards, no advisors, just Emperor Valthorix, Ambassador Hall, Dr. Chen, and General Rodriguez. Coffee was served. Valthorix tried it, made a face, but kept drinking. Your species confuses me, Valthorix admitted. 847 worlds I've conquered, and I understood them all. They feared us, they submitted, they became part of the Empire. It was simple. But we're not simple, Hall agreed. Never have been. We're complicated, contradictory, frustrating, and occasionally brilliant. We fight each other, then work together. We create art and weapons. We reach for the stars while still struggling with problems at home. We're a mess, honestly. But you're a functional mess, Valthorix said. Somehow. Your technology rivals or exceeds our own. Developed in a fraction of the time. Your culture is chaotic but vibrant. Your military is formidable despite, or perhaps because of, your internal conflicts. How? Dr. Chen leaned forward. Can I tell you a secret? One that's not really a secret, but that most species seem to miss. Valthorix nodded. Progress doesn't come from peace and stability, she said. It comes from challenge, from conflict, from necessity. Every human advance, every breakthrough, every innovation, it came because someone had a problem that needed solving. We developed agriculture because we were hungry. We developed medicine because we were sick. We developed aerospace technology because we wanted to beat each other to the moon. Competition drives us. Challenge pushes us. Fear motivates us. And when we're not fighting external threats, we fight each other, which keeps us sharp. That sounds exhausting, Valthorix said. It is, Rodriguez agreed. But it also means we're never complacent. We're always improving, always adapting, always pushing boundaries. You conquered 847 worlds over how many centuries? 12, Valthorix said quietly. We went from first powered flight to walking on the moon in 66 years, Rodriguez said. From the first computer to artificial intelligence in 70 years. From splitting the atom to fusion power in 80 years. We don't move slowly. Because you can't afford to, Valthorix said, understanding dawning. You're always competing, always racing, always fighting for advantage. It's built into your species, pretty much, Hall said. Which is why your standard conquest model was never going to work on us. You expected us to be like the other species you've encountered. Unified under fear, easily intimidated, willing to submit to superior force. But humans don't really do submission. We do spite, stubbornness, and an unreasonable refusal to accept that something is impossible. Valthorix was quiet for a long moment, processing. What happens now? He finally asked. You could destroy my fleet. You've made that abundantly clear. Are you going to? God, no, Hall said, laughing. Why would we? You haven't actually hurt anyone. You've been pompous and dramatic and kind of annoying, but you haven't committed any violence. You destroyed an asteroid that nobody cared about and gave us 3 days of excellent meme material. We're not going to start a war over that, then what? We talk, Dr. Chen said simply. You've got 12 centuries of experience governing a multi-species empire. That's knowledge we could use. And you clearly have some interesting technology we'd love to learn about. Your faster-than-light drives are fascinating. Your energy shields are elegant even if they're a bit outdated, and your biological sciences are apparently quite advanced. In exchange for? Valthorix asked warily. Teaching you what we know, Chen shrugged. Cultural exchange. Scientific collaboration. Maybe some trade agreements if we can figure out what each species needs. The galaxy's a big place. Plenty of room for everyone. No reason we can't be neighbors instead of enemies. You would share your technology? Your military advances? Some of it, Rodriguez said. Not the really dangerous stuff, not right away. Trust has to be earned on both sides. But yeah, we're willing to cooperate. On equal terms. Equal terms, Valthorix repeated. No one has ever offered the Zephyron Empire equal terms before. Well, Hall said, smiling. Maybe that's because no one ever had the firepower to back up the offer. We do, and we're choosing cooperation anyway. That's got to count for something. Emperor Valthoric stood, and this time when he drew himself to his full height, it wasn't an attempt at intimidation. It was respect. I must consult with my advisors, he said. And with the Council of Worlds. This has gone unprecedented. The Empire does not negotiate. The Empire conquers. Maybe it's time for the Empire to evolve, Hall suggested gently. The Zephyrin fleet departed 3 days later, leaving Earth's orbit with far less fanfare than they'd arrived with. No grand declarations, no threats, no promises. Just a simple message from Emperor Valthorix broadcast on all frequencies. People of Earth, the Zephyrin Empire acknowledges your sovereignty. We will return in time to discuss terms of mutual cooperation. Until then, thank you for the ice cream. And the memes, especially the cat videos. We did not understand their appeal before. We do now. The message ended, and the ships vanished into FTL, leaving behind only the fading ripples of their passage. On Earth, the reaction was predictably chaotic. News coverage, analysis, celebration, a few conspiracy theories, and of course more memes. The prevailing sentiment was captured by a viral post. Aliens came to conquer us. We showed them memes and gave them ice cream. They left confused but happy. Humanity 1, Galactic Empire 0. In the Geneva conference room, Ambassador Hall, Dr. Chen, and General Rodriguez remained, watching the alien fleet disappear on the monitors. Think they'll actually come back? Rodriguez asked. Oh, they'll be back, Chen said confidently. We offered them something more valuable than conquest. We offered them partnership, growth, change. They'd be stupid to refuse, and whatever else they are. They're not stupid, plus, Hall added, grinning. We may have accidentally included detailed schematics for our quantum tunneling drives in the data package we gave them. You know, as a gesture of good faith. You what? Rodriguez stared at him. Relax, they're incomplete schematics. They'll figure it out eventually. But it'll take them a few years, by which time we'll have moved on to even better technology, and they'll realize they need to keep talking to us if they want to keep up. Hall's grin widened. It's an incentive structure. We stay ahead, they stay interested, everyone benefits. That's devious, Chen said admiringly. That's diplomacy, Hall corrected, with a human twist. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, contemplating the enormity of what had just happened. Humanity's first contact with a galactic empire, and they'd turned it into a cultural exchange program. You know what the best part is? Rodriguez said suddenly. In about 50 years, when we've built our own FTL ships and start exploring the galaxy for real, we're going to show up at the Zephyron Empire's doorstep. And when they see us coming, they're not going to see conquerors or threats. They're going to see that annoying neighbor who always brings unsolicited casseroles and won't leave until you try them, Chen finished, laughing. Exactly, Rodriguez said. We're going to be the galaxy's most persistent, most friendly, most technologically advanced busybodies. And there's not a damn thing anyone can do about it. Ambassador Hall raised his coffee cup in a toast. To humanity, we didn't join the Galactic Empire. We're going to make the Galactic Empire join our book club. They clinked cups, laughing as above them the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, now just a little bit closer than they'd been before. Somewhere in deep space, aboard the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Valthorix sat in his private chambers, staring at the datapad in his hands. On it was the incomplete schematic for quantum tunneling drives alongside a note from Dr. Chen. Here's a head start. Looking forward to what you do with it. See you in a few years. Bring snacks. Humanity. Despite himself, Valthorix smiled. The galaxy, he realized, had just gotten a lot more interesting. And humanity, those strange, chaotic, brilliant, impossible humans, had done something no species had ever done before. They'd made the Zephyron Empire laugh. That alone was worth more than 1,000 conquered worlds.